Well, I wanted to try to make it a quick video. I know I say quick videos before, but try to make this an actual quick video and stick to the images that I've set up and relate this to what the main talking head out there for the Pizzagate stuff is a man named David Seaman. And he's connected to Alex Jones, and he's pretty much how I'm seeing him now. He's like a representative of the alternative news or the so-called independent media. This is how I'm seeing what is being called real news under the surface of the mainstream world, which is also considering itself real news. The reason why Hollywood is getting involved in politics and unspoken politics like DAPL, Bernie Sanders merging with TYT, Alex Jones merging with Trump. This is to create an idea of what is so-called real and what is fake. So as you can understand, 9/11 is still, or the inside jobness of 9/11 is still understood as fake or some kind of conspiracy theory, when you even have your physicists and like hard science, so-called hard scientists, who are explaining very openly that the way the towers fell is according to their own laws of physics, not only improbable but impossible. So this whole design of real and fake is being brought together by this controlled demolition of information and so-called news. So this is an actual war on information to present to the public what is real and what is fake. This is why you have the mainstream media with this whole blast off of fake news, and you have the alternative news just continuing the agenda of calling the mainstream fake. And what everybody is missing is, on purpose, is the bigger agenda of the platform or the foundation of which this checker game is being played. So just like Black Lives Matter got pinned up against the police and the government and so on and so forth, knowing that that was a controlled opposition by George Soros and so forth, this program is a controlled opposition and demolition of the so-called alternative news against the mainstream, and which is a representation, the mainstream as a representation of the government outwardly. This is another orchestrated fight, and whoever takes the fall, which will be the mainstream, will eventually take the fall in one side, and then the alternative news will continue to get inflamed, because this is about playing with your emotions. This is why the pedophile stuff is coming out, to implode the system underhand on one side and inflame the other story, the stories of what is real. So nobody understands what is real when the entire system doesn't recognize. It's literally the other world. It's literally two different worlds. So this David, is it David Seaman? Yeah, David Seaman. David Seaman is the main guy calling himself an independent media representation. So he represents the alternative news. He's like the figurehead for the alternative news. The mainstream media itself is its own representation of what it deems as fake and what is real. So whatever they talk about is considered real to them, and whatever anybody else talks about is considered fake. This David Seaman guy, in his last video, he might have made another one since then, the last one I saw was like yesterday, referenced Pizzagate as quote, the greatest cover up of all time. Automatic red flag there when I was just like, oh, okay, well, this is a formalized stance. Now, not to take anything away from the pedophilia ring and all that stuff that's going on, and the fact that this could very well bring down this entire colonial empire. But this is not the greatest cover up of all time. This is still within the movie reel. It's still part of the system. So David Seaman connected with Alex Jones. Alex Jones connected with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now the president-elect. He's still not in there yet because there's always that other card of we don't know what, since Obama's not saying anything, Obama could, the only thing keeping Obama from doing another term is one amendment, and don't even know what else they could be thinking about doing. But the main thing is instability, and the only thing that is stable still to this moment is people's belief in Barack Obama. Even though he hadn't spoke on anything about DAPL and everything like that, people still believe him more than anything. They believe him more than, and Michelle Obama. They believe both of them more than anything in the mainstream media, anything in the alternative news. So if they were to come out and say, they're basically like the mother and father right now still of the United States. So if they were to come out and say, well, you know, this is this and this is that, then they're the actual ones who determine what is real and what is fake. And you have Donald Trump, who has zero credibility. He's a total loose cannon, and not to mention the fact that he's tied directly in with Alex Jones and InfoWars, who has already been the face of this so-called fake news. But they talk about so much so-called real stuff, it's kind of balling up everything so it can fall along with it. All of the information that circles around the storylines gets thrown out along with whatever, Trump, Alex Jones, and so on and so forth. So this is the fight. This is the outward fight. You have people talking about Pizzagate, people talking about the pedophilia stuff, Hollywood coming out and talking about it. You have, this is the emotional trigger. You have the links with the president-elect. You have the Americanism and the American dream perspective of the supremacy program with Alex Jones and all of this. He's basically this Make America Great Again based upon the enslavement, genocide, and massacre. The total looking the other way of the reality that people on the streets and connected with the indigenous and aboriginal genetic coding, the ancestral threads of that reality, are completely being looked the other. Everything is disregarding the natural organic connections between humanity and the earth plane. And this all pretty much boils down to energy. It boils down to energy when we see the DAPL stuff going on, and that's oil. It's old. It represents the banking industry and all that old mentality. So that's like, it's another system that needs to fall. And we already know that so-called free energy, solar energy, this is all going to be a part of the next agenda, or the next, the new age. So in order to bring that in, they have Kesha, who's part of the good guy, to bring down this mainstream, obvious pedophile ring, the bad guys of that world. Kesha is the main speaker for the Spaceship Program Organization. And I already went through this, but I wanted to just show you to see how it links into the globe model, obviously, and even further into this technological transhumanism mentality. and this idea of global peace and pretty much the new world order, the new age order, sold to you under this love and light perspective of we're all one and everything is needs to be just regular plain old mayonnaise sandwiches because everything has been so destructive in the recent past, and we should just all come together. It's like, wait a second, what about before everything was shit? You're not going to talk about that? Nope. We're just going to do what we say to do now because we have technology, which has been hidden from everybody on purpose for this very moment. So you have the emotional of the negative, and then you have the emotional of the positive with this whole peace and space alien agenda and SpaceX and all this other stuff. And then you have your talking heads like Leonardo DiCaprio, who coincidentally just won an Oscar this year. And he's the messenger of peace, talking about climate change and global climate change directly locked into the oil industry, and that old program needs to die. We need to fix climate change, all based upon the globe model, all based upon the so-called powers that be system. And this is another version of the alternative news, which is covering DAPL. So you have Alex Jones' version of the alternative news covering Pizzagate. Then you have, which leads into free energy and spaceships and that part of the new world order and all that stuff. Then you have TYT and the people who are hooked into that perspective from Bernie Sanders and so on and so forth. Locked into DAPL, the emotional perspectives of why isn't Obama saying anything? Why is this happening? This is obvious that the oil people are the bad guys. They're the villains, and they need to stop taking over all this stuff. They are just a microcosm of the macrocosm of what the United States government has done across the earth plane. What DAPL is doing to the Native Americans is what the United States government does to the indigenous and aboriginal people across the earth plane. That is the colonial program. So in order to make you believe in a particular agenda that needs to be played out, the old story needs to be imploded and the new story needs to be brought up. So all this stuff is understood as part of this destructive program. So you have TYT up at DAPL creating your perspectives of the good guys and bad guys, which is already known. You already know that. But it means to focus your energy on a micro perspective and never look at the macro perspective. See, the micro perspective is to get you caught up in this idea, like David Seaman mentioned with the Pizzagate stuff, as the greatest cover-up of all time. It's not the greatest cover-up of all time. It's a horrible, destructive, and sick cover-up altogether, but it's not at all, especially when you take into account the globe model and the colonial program. Those are two giant ones right there that completely overshadow anything that exists within this out of balance society that we're in right now. And in order to make you believe it and and look down on your family and brothers and sisters and all kinds of other stuff, just like this whole you voted for Trump. You got some people voting for Trump and some people voted for Hillary. They hate each other now because of a fucking illusion. Same thing happens when you have people who are tied up with particular perspectives and people that they relate to with celebrities. So these celebrities hook up with TYT, and they're stuck in that perspective of, this needs to change, which I'm not saying that it doesn't need to change. What I'm saying is that this is the microcosm to the macrocosm. When you're caught up within the box, when you're caught up within the illusion, then that's how the illusion maintains its power over you. because you give your power away, your focus, your energy, your emotions, your energy in motion. You give it away to the storyline that gets presented to you, the microcosm within the macrocosm. So all of this alternative news stuff against the so-called real news or mainstream news, and then you have Black Lives Matter against All Lives Matters and the police. All these are microcosms within the macrocosm of mind control programming. And the way you believe into it is to have these celebrities get out there and be the the talking heads for you to believe in this stuff. And if anybody speaks up again, like not really against it, or says anything that expands the storyline beyond the microcosm storyline, then something's wrong with you, or you're missing the point. And that's the whole thing. Just like what anti-Semitism, that mentality, that whole thing is a creation. This hostility towards or discrimination against Jews, that is a mind control program that was invented to protect the alchemy that particular the Jesuits and the other people behind the scenes are utilizing. It's the victimization program. It's the victim program. So it's just like when you're made to feel bad simply because of who you are. Like people like Christmas. So like so people who celebrate Christmas and holidays and Thanksgiving, and somebody who doesn't celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving, because we understand the information and the energy within that program, to like even my old self, like 10 years ago, or somebody else, however many years ago, or whatever, somebody who really believes in Christmas and really believes, or I should go longer than that. Like it's almost like Santa Claus telling kids that Santa Claus doesn't exist. It's the same thing in regards to not celebrating Christmas for adults and not celebrating Thanksgiving. Something's wrong with you. It's like, you don't like eating dinner with your family? You don't like gifts and presents? You don't like the globe model? What is wrong with you? Something is wrong with you. You don't love this? It's the same thing that happens. It's the victimization program. Simply because you think differently than that system, that makes you the enemy. It makes you the bad guy, because they've made themselves, with their belief systems, the victim. With the way the story has been told over time, they've made themselves the victim, which makes you the bad guy. If you say anything counter to any of the stories that are so-called mainstream, or what is being referred to as real, and what is being referred to now on the other side as fake. So that's the same thing like Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's like, you're not real. You're fake, because you don't like gifts. You don't like Christmas spirit. You're a Grinch. It's the victimization program. It's the same thing. So to protect stories, energies have to be created with, it's like backwards magic. It's like, how the fuck did you make me a bad guy? Like, how am I a bad guy simply because I know the origins of Thanksgiving? I know the origins of Santa Claus and Christmas, and I know what that energy represents. And just because you put lights all over your car and all over your house and all over a tree, and you don't know the energy behind that Christmas tree and behind all of this celebratory energy, you don't know any of that stuff. Like, because that world has been invented by the belief structure, what's the side effects to that belief structure and those inventions are to have enemies. So, and bad guys. So this is that old programming of belief systems that is being manipulated to sell in the next agenda of mind control programming. And it means to jump off of the illusion, the distraction. So the globe model and so-called hard science and so-called real news, that means to set the platform for the new age and totally not look at any of the information that cuts the leg out of the colonial system itself, the foundations to the origins of the mind control program and the university system and all of this stuff to begin with. It'll never look at the earth plane itself. It'll never look at or address NASA. It only means to distract you and keep you caught up in a particular version of reality that is the microcosm within the box. So when they sell you a bigger box to be a part of, which is this new age agenda, this so-called peace, world global peace and spaceship programming and free energy programming, like that's like Christmas. You don't like spaceships? you don't like free energy? You don't like, I'm like, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that those are slave masters who are selling you a program. And just like Christmas and Thanksgiving, that's an energy that is not for you. It's the same victimization program. It's just expanded into a bigger box. And when we get caught up in the red and the blue of it all, we don't realize the purple energy of the royal program that's being played against the divine consciousness that exists within each and every individual as a manifestation of the divine masculine and the divine feminine being reflected directly from spirit. So, but as long as we are locked into technology and the codependency, victimization, colonial program, and what exists within the micro boxes, then we won't realize our own inner and outer space that is organic. This is all synthetic. The new age mentality, that's an escape mechanism. The way the new age, like in relation to my last video I did, the new age community is an escape mechanism from the destructive reality that is the mainstream war and sick and disease society. So another vibration was created by individuals and communities to say, well, this is how life should be and this is how it all is. But when you create that should be reality, you're creating another world. That doesn't mean that the other world doesn't exist. You just created another world to exist in, to run away from the other world. And what's happening now is that nobody can run away. People can't run away individually or collectively any longer. And both of these worlds are colliding. And the so-called powers that be need to maintain their control grid, their system of control by manipulating the way the story gets told, by manipulating who is the bad guy, who is the good guy, what is real and what is fake. And it doesn't matter what's existing inside of there. It matters who's telling you this stuff. Who's the one that's telling you? Who are the people that's telling you the storyline? And as long as you get caught up in the good guy, the superhero, and the villain, then you won't realize that you're being taken down an entire mind control program overall. And as long as we keep playing in that storyline, we won't realize our organic connections to spirit, to the earth plane, to each other that exists outside of the slave mentality. We won't know who and what we really are. So all of these programs that are being promoted by the slaves, by the government, they're still referring to the Aboriginal Americans, so-called black people. They're still referring to the Aboriginal Americans as black and African American. That's an energy. That's a mind control program. That's like your slave name or legal name. It's like your straw man of your ancestral threads. That's what it is. When they call you African American, or they call you black, or when you call yourself African American, or when you call yourself black, you are referring to the straw man of your ancestral threads. And it's no different than the mentality of the slave mind, that has added up to this entire mind control program. And that's where the energy gets held. Literally, if you do not challenge yourself to get outside of that mind control program, then you will allow yourself to be susceptible to whatever the micro world sells to you. So they say, well, we have an African American, an African American people joining with the Native Americans here at DAPL. That's a different energy. Is the Aboriginal tribes of America are uniting with the Native American tribes of the reservations of America to challenge the colonial program. That's a different energy. That's a whole different world. I almost said wholly different world. It is a whole different world. Completely. Energetically when you see that. Because it's about the language and how we understand ourselves. If we understand ourselves based upon the storyline that was presented to us by slave owners, by people who have made a business out of destroying history, destroying the present moment, destroying connections with nature and consciousness and alchemy, which is true science and true spirit, destroying the balances and the harmonics of the universal consciousness by expanding separation and expanding this supremacist mentality. If we continue to play that game, then we will never tap into what our ancestors had already tapped into. We won't be able to understand the true balances of nature. We won't be able to understand what it is that is our maximum potential. And the reason why this whole real and fake stuff is going on is because they want to maintain the storyline as a whole. And they'll say, this is the greatest cover-up of all time. Okay. Really? I think there's something further than that. In fact, there's a few things that are more, a few things that can be named on that is the greatest cover-up of all time. Beyond that, this is just within the Roman programming, within the Roman design. This pedophilia stuff, this Pizzagate stuff was actually normal. It was everyday stuff in ancient Rome. It was part of the law in ancient Rome. So for people who are saying, well, ancient Rome did fall, and this is not ancient, this is not Rome today, this is whatever it is they're calling it. No, this is just underground ancient Rome today. Now it's being revealed. It's being revealed for what it is. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with this video. I said I was going to keep it short, but I had to go where I was going with it in order to hit all those points. So thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.